for another tutorial. We're finally going to get Mandalorian from our gridded digital screen to our actual canvas. I know it took a while, but we've been having some technology issues. It seems like everything in the last week that could go wrong has been going wrong. So I thank you in advance, and I apologize just to say that there might be some microphone quality issues or some camera quality issues, but I'm going to do my very best to make sure that we get the best quality video. A couple things I do want to say beforehand is that not only has my technology been kind of screwy, but so is my placement with all of my canvases and easels and such. So I'm in my garage right now, which is very different. I don't even have a full-size piece of plywood to hold up this canvas, so we're going to do our very best. I'm going to try to walk you guys through the process of how I get my digital image onto the canvas in the best way possible. So again, thanks for bearing with me. I know it's kind of weird this time around, but we're gonna get through it. All right, so let's say that I want to get this heart from one piece of paper to a blank sheet of paper. They're both gridded out, but I want to make this paper look exactly the same as this one. It might be really easy to say, well, just draw the lines where they're supposed to be. When you're doing this, make sure that you have a really good space to work in. You have a really good space to work in terms of that you can look directly head on to a picture. So you want to take whatever you're using as your reference, and you want to be able to look straight on to whatever canvas you're working with, directly straight on as well. So just for a quick starter, I'm going to try to copy this heart from this piece of paper to this piece of paper, and I'm going to try to find something that kind of tells me where to start. Whether it be, there's a couple different ways you can do this, and no way is wrong, but whatever works for you. So you can either work what's in the picture, or you can work with what's already on the grid. And I know that sounds kind of funky, but what I mean by that is, maybe you want to start off where the divot, the low point of the heart is, either the very bottom or the part of the top that kind of goes in. Maybe you want to start off with the grid in numbers. So maybe it will be easier for you to say, okay, I'm going to start in row 1, column 3, or row 2, column 3, and that's where I'm going to start. However you feel it works best for you, go ahead and try that out. I kind of do a little bit of both, and I'll try to explain both of those as well. So when I'm going to try to start to copy this heart from picture A to picture B, I think personally for this one, I'm going to start off with a point. So I think I'm going to start with this point in here in the inside of the heart, and I'm going to notice that it is in row 2, column 3, and if I need to do this in my mind, I can kind of try to split this in half again a little bit, and it'll tell me that the point is a little bit lower than halfway, and it's a little bit to the right of center. So let's try to bring that from this piece of paper over to this piece of paper. So I'm going to go row 2, column 3, and if I can imagine, pretend there's another line here and another line here, I'm going to start a little bit below halfway and a little bit to the right of center. So I know that this is kind of my starting point. Now, for some people that are used to doing, looking at an image and then tracing it on a different sheet, or just kind of freehanding art, this might be a little bit easier for you. You can kind of just follow whatever line you have here. So I can look at this and I can say, well, this point is going to go right above the middle when it hits the line, the rightmost line of column 3. So I could take this line and I could go right here. Some other people might think that it would be easier to make points for themselves along the way. So if they wanted to go to the left, they could say, well, this is just maybe a third above the middle. If you were to split this middle section into thirds again, you can always break it down farther. So maybe they would put a point there instead and say like, oh, that's where I'm going to connect the two. And they could do that through this whole picture until they get somewhat of a connect the dot line. So that might be helpful for some folks to then follow through that way. However, if you are used to just drawing freehand, it might be easier to just test your limits and kind of see what you can do in terms of following this line with your eye and executing it with your hand. Takes a bit of practice. Now I've smudged this side up quite a bit, and my grid was not done by a computer, so it is subject to impurities, or it's subject to having mistakes in it. But I would say that we have a pretty good copy from A to B. So I know this sounds quite simple that I just showed you this, but we're going to take it way up a notch and we're going to start working on the Mandalorian picture. So if you happened to complete a grid with my other tutorial, or if you Frankensteined Mandalorian with me, or you grabbed another picture that you want to copy, feel free to grit that out. We're going to get it up on I use my phone, but you can use whatever digital resource you have available to you. And we're going to start gridding Mr. Mandalorian, if it would focus. Yeah. Now that I've showed you guys a basic shape for gridding, we're going to try to get a little more complicated, and we're going to start off with our Mandalorian. And since I have this canvas clipped into a certain point, this is my very middle spot, I'm going to start off with something in the middle, and I'm going to kind of work my way to either side, moving the canvas as I go. Like I said, this is kind of a weird setup, even for me. Usually I'm not working with just 2 feet wide, if that's even what this is, 2.5 feet wide. So it's going to be a little bit of a weird, it's not going to look like Mandalorian at first, but I promise as soon as we are done with the outline, maybe even done with his helmet, you'll totally recognize him. So I'm going to start off, I'm probably going to grab, he's got I'll bring this up in a different little frame, and it should pop up right about now. And I'm going to zoom in on parts of the picture that I'm drawing from so that you can see and kind of follow along to what I'm drawing as I go. So I'm going to bring this camera up close, kind of over my shoulder, and we're going to take it step by step through different pieces of his armor or his helmet, and then I'm actually going to time lapse the rest. We're focused in. So I hope this isn't too distracting, but I've got a different color. Hopefully it's not gonna mess up this image too much, just for the fact that I just wanted to get this through so that you could see the basics. But now that we're working with the actual picture of Mandalorian, I'm gonna show you how I go through that. I showed you that I had the middle point marked out, and I have every 5th line a different color, so I can associate it with the grid that I drew, and I know exactly where I'm supposed to be. For this part, since I'm starting in the middle, I'm going to try to grab something in the middle to start off with. This is what I've got clipped off on my canvas. This is where I'm working right now, so this is what I'm going to try to find. And in this case, 1, 2, 3, I can count up from the grid lines. I can see that his shoulder armor starts at about the 1, 2, 3. So 1, 2, 3. This 3rd mark above the middle. This will be kind of the middle part of his shoulder and arm. So I'm going to start off pretty darn close to this spot. Finding a corner usually works for me. So what I'm going to do is his armor kind of begins right here. It's a little bit to the left of this first line. The first line to the left of our center line. And I'm going to start there and I'm going to slowly follow it up. I can see that it hits maybe a third from the bottom of this line. And I'm going to follow it to the left again. It's going to go through at about halfway of this first line. And then it's going to come probably a third over here. And it just brushes this line. Cool. I'm going to follow it back. I know that this is actually, it's a green line. I just made it purple, but that's our center line. And I can see, I might not have to go square by square, but I can make myself a mark here, and I can make myself a mark here, and that tells me where the top line of that armor is. Pretty nifty. Now I want to go to the other side, and I can see that this intersects right over here. Let's see if I want to line up with this other grid, or this other green line. It crosses in the second row up about halfway, and it will land on this line, maybe a little bit farther over. So now I can kind of connect these dots. And then we have kind of another edge that comes down this way. It's the corner box down. It's a little bit down and to the left. And it crosses right here. Sweet. And now I know it also crosses on that intersection. And where it crosses this middle line is right about here. So now I can connect those. Well, folks, that is the Mandalorian's shoulder plate armor. Granted, it doesn't have all the details in it yet, but it will. Let's travel down a little bit and let's find where the bottom of his arm sticks out on this middle line. So going to the next green line, it's it's pretty much on that line. So that's the bottom of his arm. And that arm is going to intersect, let's see where it intersects the next line down. It intersects at 1, 2, just a little bit this way. Sweet. Now we're going to go over to the left. And it's probably 1, 2, 3. And we're going to go up 1. And it's a little bit under that. Oops. Nope, made a mistake. So it's only up 1 line. I forgot. And we're going to start here. And we're going to go down to here. He's got kind of a funky wrinkle. Comes up this way. Intersects at that point. And then it's going to travel all the way over here on kind of a curve. Bam. Let's bring it back in towards the right. Right under his shoulder armor is a little metal piece that goes just over the left side of that green line. Down 1, square, rectangle, and up again. Bam. I bounce around a lot when I do the outline. I don't know why really, but I try to get a big chunk of what's there, and then I'll go back in and I'll do some of the details. Watch in real time as I screw up my grid. here he is, all sketched out, all gridded out, ready to fill it in, do all the details and things that make it magical. I would love to see what you guys are doing. If you're gridding at home, send me a link or a comment or something that I can see your art. I love to see other artists' work. Feel free to send me that stuff. And in the meantime, have fun drawing. Feel free to subscribe or follow, hit that notification bell, and tune in next week for our next tutorial. Thanks. Bye.